relationship. Yeah.
So we open up the interview with laughter because we're speaking about relationships this show. How you doing, Miss Alexander?
I am great, Minister Sean Oliver, Mr. himself.
Okay, you didn't know whether it hit me with the minister or the mister. So
I didn't.
okay.
I did not. So whichever one applies, you can edit it. You good at that. You can edit whichever one out. You don't need.
So open up the conversation. Relationships.
Oh, relationships have always been my difficulty. From as early on as I can remember. I've always loved too hard, I think. I love people. And even family members. I mean, it seems that I struggle even in trying to maintain family relationships. And I don't know why that is, but I really want to get to the core of what's my issue and fix that, because I don't want to push people out of my life. I don't want to run people away. I want to love and be loved. And that's been my desire ever since I can remember. So it's just difficult. It's hard for some reason.
I'm listening, and I know you're being very serious. It was just a song running through the back of my mind and said,
of course, that's what you do.
That if you think you're lonely now, wait until the night.
And what's that mean?
I don't know. I don't think it's relevant, but I just said when you went to saying that, I said, man, this woman is talking about something serious. And it's if you think you're alone. Yeah, I said, okay. So, because I care. When you say love too hard, because you are a woman of faith.
Yes.
I don't think it's possible to love too hard, because nobody loved as hard as God. Because God loved so hard that people who he knew, no matter what he did, no matter who he sent, they would never, ever, ever, ever want him. And he still did it. That's loving hard. Yes. And so when you say loving hard, I think we should delve off into what your definition of that is. Because all I'm trying to bring out is just that statement. You can't love harder than God.
Right.
And so I understand you're saying something. So let's flesh that out, because there might be somebody else out there that feels like or felt like they love too hard.
Yeah. When I say I love too hard, meaning I think in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, I put more into the relationship than I get back.
Okay.
And it's not an expectation. It's no longer an expectation of mine that because I love someone that they're going to love me back. But why do I love, so hard or so passionately, so completely? And I keep getting the same.
So if I hear correctly, you have loved selflessly.
Yes.
And the individuals that you have loved in that manner, your experience has said that they're loving selfishly, meaning you get what I give you and that's all. While you're on, I'm giving you this, but if you want more, even if you're not doing what it takes to bring it out of me, I'm still willing to try to find it. That's how much I care. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. And so has there ever been a situation or circumstance where somebody you love like that was willing to learn how to love you better?
Oh, yeah.
So let's focus on that. How did that end?
In divorce.
In divorce. Okay. So the individual that you're using as the example, they were open and allowed you to teach them how to love you, how you wanted to be loved, and that ended in divorce. Boy, that's a long bridge. I don't think we can cross in the interview. Because if they're open to loving you, and you're saying that you were loving selflessly, and they were open to how to learn how to love selflessly, how did love go to separation?
Drugs.
Okay.
It was a, there
Okay.
was a third party that.
No, and let's okay here. Now we cooking, as they say.
Yeah.
So the reality, when we say that we love according to how you believe and how I believe, we love sacrificially.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I want some feedback from you. If I put something ahead of you, whether it's self, whether it's drugs, whether it's another woman, then that's not love.
Right.
Okay. The reason that I'm very interested in that response that you gave, because I'm like, no, if he's open to learning.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the other part of that. The Bible says if we're to dwell, especially a husband and a wife, the husband should dwell with the wife according to understanding. Okay. And so is there any other example? Because if drugs don't come in there, if the third party doesn't come in there, that seems like everything's going to be okay. And so this interview is not about why people entertain third parties or
Right.
fourth parties or cheat. This is about relationships, just what you've learned.
Right.
So I would just encourage you that if it happened once, it can happen again.
Yeah.
But it seems that the weight is putting a weight on you.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have a word from the Lord
Concerning waiting
concerning
or
your weight?
concerning?
Concerning your weight?
No. And that's, I think that's my, I don't want to call it a frustration, but it is a concern, is that I'm not really hearing from God if that is his intention or plan to allow me to marry again, or neither do, so just not having the specifics from God as to a promise that I'm going to be married again. It kind of blocks everything else. It's no reason for me to seek him for who, or that isn't even my place, but to seek him for when or if and all that kind of stuff, because he hasn't said a word to me. I've put my desire out there. I've told him what I desire. He already knows my testimony because he delivered me. He knows the whole deal. So he knows that I'm waiting on him, but whether or not the wait is going to prove fruitful on or favorable on my behalf, I don't know. So
I understand. And if I was there physically, I would call out a song. I say, we're going to sing. I'm a living testimony, so we can stir up that gift, because I know you need some encouragement.
yeah.
But okay, so I'm just gonna not put myself in your position, but you already know my circumstances, and so what I do have a promise, and so if I did not have a promise, what I've done in times like that is focus my thoughts on energy on whatever he is speaking to me about, and
Yes.
wait on the other.
Yeah.
And that's not a catchphrase. That's not an easy way out. That's to say, I've heard this example used repeatedly where a church member goes to the pastor and says, "Hey, pastor, I'm going to leave the church because people on their phones during church, people not paying attention during church, people talking and having fun while you preaching, and they doing all this. I don't need to be in this church." And the pastor tells the individual, "Well, I want you to do one thing before you go. I want you to come back for one service and do one thing for me." And the congregation member says, okay, what's that one thing? And he says, you just come back one more service. It's not going to hurt you. Come back one more service. So they come and they meet the pastor before the service. And the pastor says, I want you to take this full glass of water. And as service is going on, I want you to walk around the whole church on the outer aisles and don't spill a drop. And the congregation member agrees. And they do it. And they did it to the end of the service. And at the end of the service, the pastor went and got them. And the people were wondering what that individual was doing. And that individual was wondering what they doing. But the pastor went on like nothing was going on. And the pastor said, did you see anybody on the phone? I said, no. Did you see anybody talking and laughing while I was preaching? No. He said, why didn't you see it? And the individual said, because I was focused on not spilling that water.
Right.
And I know that has been said over and over, but the reason that it always resonates, including at this moment, causes you to smile, because we truly do understand when our focus is on doing something, everything else pales in comparison. And so I'm not giving you arbitrary advice. I'm saying, even though I do have a promise, I still find myself in the same physical circumstances as you, and I am carrying my glass of water. You don't have a promise, but I'm just encouraging you and wanting you to think, what is your glass of water? Because if you carry that glass of water, and what that glass of water looks like to me right now is my business. What that glass of water looks like to me right now is youth who need me. What my glass of water looks like right now is meeting different individuals who've already accomplished some things in life, but for whatever reason, God sends me in their life and we have some things yet to still accomplish together. What do you think some of your glasses of water or glass of water is right now, besides the obvious, the ministry that you have been faithful in for the last year? What else would comprise your one glass of water?
Well, I guess I really haven't been focused on any of that, because I've been so focused on the loneliness and the
Okay, we'll get there, but I need a glass of water right now.
All right. Let me think. Let me just, of course I have my job and things happen there all the time. And again, that whole scenario of navigating through relationship comes into play even there, because I've had situations to come up between people that are in authority over me, that I felt like I was being, treated unfairly or whatever. So my focus overall in general, as it relates to relationship, my glass of water is maintaining the purity of my heart in spite of what's going on, what's happening to me, what's happening around me, not to focus on that, but to focus on my relationship with God and maintain my purity of heart so that I can navigate through that successfully and according to God's will. I don't want to get out of God's will and start acting out of character or acting in self and mess up with God. So that's what I've been focused on, is keeping myself pure in heart.
So up until right now, this moment, tell me some things that have enabled you to do that. Though it's been difficult, though it is hard, what are some of the things that have enabled you to at least stand? Although, as you're saying, I'm shaking, I'm tired, I got perspiration coming down, but you're standing. So tell me how.
The hope.
I need some more details.
I know, but that was
I got you.
There's a scripture in the Bible that says, for the joy that was set before him, Jesus endured the cross, despising the shame. But now he's sat down at the right hand of the Father. And so the hope that I have is that, yeah, there's some things that I desire on this side of life. But I don't want to be too caught up in all of that I miss heaven. So the hope of the life to come and being able to spend eternity in God's presence is what has kept me standing. Because it's obvious at my age that I have more years behind me than ahead of me. And so my focus has been, even if God does not allow me to get married, which is a sobering thought, because I don't want to live life alone. But if God does not allow me to get married, I still want my testimony to be that I live for God and I died on my way to his presence.
And if we were looking in the future and you made it to heaven, say you made it to heaven and you weren't married, and you look back at this moment, what would be something you would say, I'm thankful that I did that then?
I'm thankful that I did not let my emotions or my fleshly desires get in the way of my relationship with God, because I've done that before. You know, I was very promiscuous. I was, a woman that really had no boundaries when it came to what I wanted, or what was presented to me. I no holds barred. I dove head first, all in. And so when God delivered me, and I knew that I was delivered, it became first it was a challenge for me to see how long I could go without, certain things that I had enjoyed in my previous lifestyle. And it was a personal challenge. It wasn't something that I considered godly or that I was doing, for God. It was just something that I was doing just to measure my growth and development. So, but the longer I operated in that mode, it became serious to me that this was something. Well, first of all, let me back up. I started to think of it as a punishment, that my being alone was a punishment because I had done so many bad things beforehand. And then I had to get to that point in my relationship with God to understand that that's not the kind of God that he is. He doesn't punish me to prove a point. But literally what he allows in my life, or does not allow in my life, is for my good and his glory. And so my mantra throughout life has been for his glory. That's why I do what I do, is for his glory. And so when I got to that point, then it was no longer a challenge for myself, because it was not I who was doing the work or who was keeping me from doing all of the things that I'd done before. They still lived in me, but it was God. I committed my life to God to keep me. I told God, I can't do this on my own. I am not capable of living a life of sexual purity in my own self, in my own power, my own strength. And if you don't help me, we both know how this is going to end up. That's what I said to God. And from the moment that I said that, God gave me a strength that I call his enabling grace. And other than the loneliness, because we're real right now, the sexual aspect doesn't come into play. It's not like that I want to be a eunuch or nothing like that. But I've asked God to keep my sexuality at bay, keep that, I won't say on lockdown, but just don't let it come. Don't lead me not into temptation. I don't want to enter into a situation where I'm tempted to compromise. And so God has been faithful in that area. And even there's been one recent incident where, and recent when I speak about a year ago, where there was something that was presented to me, and God told me not to allow that individual to come to the house, and I did, because I didn't think anything about their being here or whatever. We had not had a discussion concerning nothing. It was just friendship. And that's when I found out that even in friendship, if the mood is right and there's an opportunity, there will be a temptation. And so literally, had God not intervened, something may have happened that night, but God knew my heart that that's not what I wanted. I want to wait until marriage. And so God intervened, and he intervened in a very forceful and powerful way, because I was paralyzed for more than 2 minutes in preparation for what could have happened. And God allowed me to become paralyzed, scared the devil out of me. And so you don't have to worry about that anymore. But God does things like that with me. I know because he loves me, and because he knows that I don't understand everything about this journey, because it's new to me. It's from age 14 up until 10 years ago? Yeah. Which I'm 65 on my birthday, so 55. From age 14 to age 55, I was a mess. And so and so, yeah, I know that there'll be some ladies that'll be tempted, just like I was, to think that, sex is an expression of love, and it is when it's in the right context. But if it's just for pleasure and it's not someone you're married to, it's a setup, because you still leave that encounter broken, alone, because normally what happens is when, there's no commitment, the person doesn't stay with you in relationship. You're left with having, broken a commandment, the guilt of all of that, and you're still alone to go through it all by yourself. And so it's not worth it, not to me. That's another motivation to not do it, is all of what comes after it. You enjoy the pleasure for a season, and it's short-lived. All of what you engaged in that encounter for is short-lived. The bliss, the joy of it, or whatever, it's very short-lived. And so it's just not worth, when you are a person of faith, a person who has a relationship with God, and better, it's not worth it.
And so I thank you for sharing that, But what if somebody's listening and they don't have a relationship with God? Is it possible for you just to speak concerning, from a woman's aspect, sex, intimacy without love? There's still a missing component.
Yes. Even without a relationship with God, respect for yourself is very, very key, because as a woman, we look in terms of, what the world says, there's more females, the ratio of females to male is, it's lopsided on the female side. There's more women looking for a relationship than there are men. And so we tend to reach back, at everything that comes to us. We think we have to, yield to it just to have a man. We don't want to be alone. And so we just give ourselves over to it. And that's the reason why the ratio is the way that it is because there are men out there, yes, they come to play, but when you respect yourself, even though they may have come to play, they see something different in you and they decide to stay. And so I would say that's what happened to me with my last relationship. My husband, he thought he would come to play, but because my mind was set on marriage, and I told him this, and the second thing was I wasn't interested in him as an individual, as a potential person, and that was by design, I think, as well, because had I have been interested in him, I probably would have engaged in the wrong things too soon or whatever. But we decided to wait until marriage to engage in sexual intercourse, and that was after I decided, or I knew that I was in love with him. The conversation, we had to have that conversation, that we had the chemistry in the conversation, and all of what makes for a very close and intimate relationship. But my goal that I stressed to him was that there's not going to be any sex until we are married. And we spent nights together, neither one of us wanted to be alone or whatever. We spent nights together, same bed, whatever, no sex, no sex. And would I do that again? No, I don't think so. Because for a lot of reasons, I don't think I would do that again, as far as the spending nights over and all that kind of stuff, because it does open doors for you to experience things that you wouldn't want to experience, or to even take the man through. The men are different from females, and I don't want to get too far off subject, but I would just say, as a woman, and you're desiring love, true love, not the fake stuff, but you're desiring true love, set a boundary for yourself, set a goal for the relationship. When you enter into a relationship and you see that it's going somewhere, don't give in to your feelings as far as the sexual part of it. Keep yourself pure, because that's really what men, I believe, that's really what they're looking for. I look at some of the ladies that are getting married these days, and I try to factor in, or cue in on what is what did this man see in this woman, and I keep hearing that she was different. And in what way would that be? And even though I can't question that gentleman about his choice or why he chose this woman, but I know she presented something that was different than what he had experienced before. And so that's where I am. I'm asking God help me to cultivate that factor in myself that makes me stand out in his eyes. What does he see? What will he see different about me as opposed to the other ladies that he has encountered? And so that would be a chief goal as a female, if you're seeking love, is to seek God. And that's even if you don't have a relationship with God. Think about what you want this man to see in you. Do you want him to see you as like everybody else, or do you want to be the one that's different? And work on that. That will keep you in a place of focusing on you instead of focusing on him. Because when you focus on him, you try to do the things that will please him, and you forget about the things that will make you the woman you need to be for him, if that makes sense.
It really does. And that reminds me, one time, a friend of mine, she said, I realized a long time ago, for me, she was speaking of her, that the way that I catch him is the way he's expecting to keep me. So if I caught him performing acts and giving in to different whims, then I'm going to have to continue that. And, you know, as humans, we get bored with the same old, same old. So her point was that generally is going to escalate. And so I made up my mind, the way that I catch him is the way that I am. And if he's meant to be caught by me, then he's going to accept me as I am.
Yes.
And so another thing that stood out to me is the fact that a key thing that I continue to hear when I'm speaking to different friends of mine who are women is, one, I don't feel seen and I want to feel seen. And the other is, what they relate to me in our discussions is the fact that although some of them will say, I will trade sex for other things. And let me give a detail in that. In other words, I want to be held. I want to be seen. I want to be appreciated. But I know the only way that I can do that is generally the men that I've met, the end goal is for me to be seen, for me to be recognized, for me to be able to spend time with him. Then sex is going to be his request. So, okay, I give you that request, but I want the other. And one thing that I try to encourage them on from a male standpoint, when the men older, when the boys younger get together and we speak about some of the most memorable women in our lives, it's never the woman that we got everything we wanted from. I'm just saying, it's from those who, man, I remember her. That was a good woman. That was a good girl, man. I should have kept her. It was never the one that I do what you want, when you want, how you want, as much as you want. It was the ones that I'm going to hold you to some kind of standard. And when I say hold you to some kind of standard, it's not so that I can be memorable, but it's because that's just a part of my makeup.
Right.
And those are the women, that the boys, that the men, sometimes over summer, sometimes decades later, remember. And so what Sister Lottie is saying is true. So if you don't want to look at it from a Christian perspective, I'm just giving you from a male perspective. You have men who have been married for decades that'll still remember the woman who didn't.
Yeah.
I said they married for decades, but they still, man, that woman right there. Why would he still esteem that woman, but he's been married to this woman for decades? Because there was something different. And we're not just equating different to not having sex, but here's the reality. In this day and age, that seems to be a majority of the, well, this got to happen. This is just normal. This is just, without a shadow of a doubt that this occurs. This has become the status quo. So when we're referring to it, if that is not your standard, we applaud you, but that's a whole lot of people's standards, because there's a whole lot of people that they say they're going to hold on. They say they're going to wait. But when you have something tempting right in front of you that seems to meet or check off all the boxes, you might surprise yourself in what you're willing to do to keep it. And all I hope you take away from this interview is Lottie said right now she has a hope that at the end of life, she'll have a good testimony. For me, I have not thought that far in advance, but for me is
Not 65.
I want a good testimony. What did you say?
You're not 65.
Okay. What I want for me is I want a good testimony now to be able to share with some people that, hey man, it is possible.
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot of people talking about what is for the betterment of a race, what is for the betterment of a people. And one thing that I found out in my short-lived life, a long-lived life, is that morality is a key to sustainability.
Yes.
So we're good morals, whether they're biblically based or society based, and I use that term very loosely, good morals, sustainability is possible and is in place, meaning don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. That's going to bring some good stuff.
Yeah.
Don't sleep with them before marriage. Don't do the other things before marriage.
Okay.
That can be done.
Right.
And your marriage might be more interesting than most people's.
Right.
And so in closing, I want to thank you for this interview. I believe it was insightful and it's going to help somebody. Is there anything like you like to share or ask me about at this moment?
Yeah. Well, one point to finally to share is that, I look around and I see a lot of people doing a lot of things, and I want to be that testimony that says that I got it the right way. I see a lot of ladies, who have compromised their with individuals that are in other relationships, already have a significant other or even wives, and they're with these people because, they don't want to be alone. And so they sacrifice what I would call a real relationship for play, to be a side piece or whatever. And so, thank God, not recently that those type of relationships have not presented themselves to me, but they have in the past. And I was one that was caught up in those kind of relationships. And so I'm by myself. I look at ladies all the time who have somebody, but they're not who they need to be with. Just for all purposes. They're not supposed to be with these. And so I want to be the testimony that says, I waited on God, and the relationship that I am in is the right one. It's the right kind of relationship. I don't want to be looked at as, oh yeah, she holy roly and she by herself. She died alone. I don't want that testimony, because I'm saying with everything that's in me that God's way is the best way. But who wants to be alone? Who would trade their life for mine? They have somebody, even though it may not be the right somebody. They would not trade their life for mine, because their ultimate desire in life is not to be alone. They want to be in relationship. And so that's part of why I want to be married. That may be a selfish reason or whatever, but I want to be that testimony. Yeah, I just want to be that testimony that will live on in somebody's mind and saying, yeah, well, Lottie, she's married now. And I remember those times when she was by herself. She didn't have anybody, but she kept saying that she was trusting God that she would be married one day, and now she is. And to look at that and say that this is what I want, and I'm going to do it her way, because now she's happy. She's got what she trusted God for.